on websites and mobile applications in Figma. So let's begin. We are on Figma.com. Here is the home page. As you can see right at the top, we have different menus, we have products, we have Figma, FigJam, we will talk about them in a few minutes. We have enterprise, we have pricing, community, company, etc. Well, we are not gonna go to these pages. If you want to check out the pricing, you can definitely go ahead and check it out. But I'd like to point out that you can use Figma for free. The paid version just allows you to create more files and have theme libraries and those kinds of features. But as long as you don't collaborate with other teammates and let's say a large team, you don't need a paid version, okay? So you can go ahead and sign up here or just log in using your Gmail account. And once you're logged in, you will see this page. Depending on your system preference, you will see the light version or dark version. If you prefer the dark version, you can head over to this top. You can find your drafts, your recent files. As you can see on the left side, we have recents, we have drafts, and we have community that we will talk about in a second. Right at the bottom, you will see your teams. You can simply create a team and add different team members to it, but for now, we are not gonna need a team. Right here at the top, we have three different options. We have this new design file, which allows you to create a design file. The next one is new FigJam file. It allows you to create a whiteboard. Basically, FigJam is a digital whiteboard, and it allows you to just gather ideas with your teammates and other designers. You can share your ideas with each other, etc. And finally, you have the import file option. This option allows you to bring different files from other design software. For example, if you've already worked with Sketch and you have a Sketch project, you can simply use this import file option to import Sketch files to Figma. Alternatively, you can just drag and drop your Sketch file or any other design file to Figma, and it will be imported to your dashboard. Here you will see a few templates that you can choose from. We are not gonna need them. If you want, you can go ahead and take a look. But for now, I'm gonna close it. And here we have a few different files. We have this FigJam file that teaches you the basics of FigJam, Figma basics, prototyping in Figma, etc. So whenever you work on a project, your project will appear in the recent section, okay? Basically, whenever you open up Figma, when you go to figma.com, assuming that you're logged in, you will be taken to the recent page and you will find your recent projects right here. If you go to draft, you will see a similar layout here, okay? We have all these options, but in drafts, you can find your files in a more organized way. But if you're just working on a project every single time, you would go to recent and you will open it up right there. Okay, we talked about recents and drafts, but what about community? Well, Figma has its own community, okay? It's all built in. And if you open it up, you can find many useful resources here right inside Figma. You don't need to go ahead and just look for Figma resources, templates, etc. somewhere else. You can just simply go to Figma community and there are tons of good stuff here. We have inspiration, projects, jam sessions, design system, web, mobile, visual assets, etc. And you can also search here in the search bar whatever you're looking for. If I just scroll down, here you can find the trending projects shared by Figma users. For example, we have this UI kit, this is a style guide, and there are many, many more. In fact, let's go ahead and search for something. I'm gonna look for crypto. Let's see if we can find a good crypto template, cryptocurrency project. Here we have many different projects. I'm gonna go with this one. It looks good. I'm gonna open it up. And here you can just click on get a copy. And a copy of this project will be saved in your Figma dashboard, okay? As you can see, it says crypto wallet mobile app community. And now we are inside a project. If you want to go to your Figma dashboard, you can simply go to this top left menu and click on back to files. And here we are in drafts. You can go to recents. And if you just want to create a new design file, you can just click on new design file. That's what we do always. So here we have a new design file And if I want to open up the template that we just created, we can do that easily. Alright, so here is the Figma interface. Basically, we can divide this interface into 4 main sections. We have the canvas right in the middle. We have the layers pane right on the left. We have the design inspector on the right side. And we have the toolbar at the top. The canvas is where you put all your frames and artboards and your design, okay? Basically, you design right here. You can simply move around if you just hold down the spacebar on your keyboard, left click and drag around. Just like that. You can zoom in and zoom out using your mouse wheel. I can hold down the command or control key on my keyboard and use my mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. So that's basically how the canvas works, and you can move around it easily. But what about the layers pane? Well, on the left side, we have the layers list. Whenever you create something, it could be a text, it could be an image, it could be a shape. It will appear as a separate layer on the layers list. If you're familiar with other design software like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe XD, Sketch, for sure you're familiar with the concept of layers, right? They stack on top of each other like this. We will talk about the hierarchy of layers later. But you need to know that you can find all your layers on the layers list right here. Right next to it, we have the assets panel. And here is where we can find our components. We will talk about components in a few minutes. Basically, you can save your components here, just like these that we have here. For example, we have this status bar, and then you can just drag and drop one of your components into your canvas or into your frame, and there it is. Okay? We will talk about it later. You can also share your assets with other designers or with your team. If you just click on this team library option right here, you will be able to share it with other designers. All right. But what about the design inspector? Well, the design inspector on the right side is a very important panel in Figma because you can basically adjust the properties of your layers in the design inspector. In fact, let me just zoom in here. And here we have different elements. If I just select, for example, this deposit button right here, you will see that on the layers list, it's been selected. And on the right side in the design inspector, we have many different options. We have the alignment options at the top. We have the coordinates here, X, Y, the width, height, and corner radius, etc. We have auto layout, constraints, layout grid, fill, stroke, effects, etc. So this inspector panel is so important, and we will talk about it in detail later. But what about the toolbar? Well, in the toolbar, we have many useful options. Here we have the selection tools. By default, it's set to move, and it allows you to just select something in your canvas and just move it around, just like this. You can change it to scale. It's useful whenever you want to scale something proportionately. Let's suppose you want to scale this deposit button. You just hit K on your keyboard to select the scale tool, or just select it from here and then scale it proportionately. Then we have the frame option. Well, basically frames are what you are seeing right now, okay? If you are coming from another design software, for example, Sketch, you may be familiar with the term artboard. Basically, frames are artboards, and they just work like a white paper, a blank page that you can just put stuff on and start designing, okay? So frames are so important, and in fact, if you want to create a frame, you can hit F on your keyboard or A, both of them will work, and you can just left click and drag to create a custom size frame. Alternatively, what you can do is this. You can hit A, and on the right side you can see that a few pre-built frames with predefined sizes appear. For example, if you go to phone, we have iPhone 13 Pro Max, you can see the dimensions, iPhone 13, 13 mini, etc. We have tablet, desktop, presentation, and so much more. Let's suppose you want to design an interface for iPhone 13 Pro Max. In this case, you can just simply head over to this section and click on this option. There it is. Your artboard, or let's say your frame, is ready, and you can start adding UI elements to this frame. Okay, the next option is the shape tool. Well, here you can create some primitives. You can create a rectangle, line, arrow, ellipse, polygon, star, and you can also use this place image option to place images. These are the only shapes you may need for UI design, okay? Of course, you can adjust them according to your needs, but you don't need anything fancy. Let's suppose you want to create a button. You will just use a rectangle. Instead, you can use a frame to create a button, which is a better way. We will discuss it later. But if you want to create a button quickly, you can just select rectangle, head over to your artboard or frame, and just left click and drag and draw a rectangle. Just like that. You can go ahead and check out all these shapes, for example, an ellipse as well. And you need to keep in mind that each of these shapes has its own properties. All of them have some default properties like width, height, corner radius, etc. But some of them have even more properties. So here for this rectangle, I have width, height. But for instance, if I go ahead and add a polygon here, look what happens. Here we have a new property called count, and it allows us to add more edges to this polygon. By default, it's set to 3. I can just increase it just like that or decrease it to 3. If you want to adjust any of these shapes, you need to enter the edit mode. Okay, in order to enter the edit mode, you have two options. You can either double click on that particular shape, and as you can see, the toolbar has changed right here. You have different options now, and I can simply select this node, for instance, and move it around to create a custom shape. And once I'm done editing, I can just hit escape on my keyboard, or I can just click on this done button. The other option is to just select your shape and hit enter on your keyboard, and you will enter the edit mode. Alright, I'm gonna remove these shapes. Next, we have the pen tool right here. We have pen and pencil. It allows you to just create different nodes and draw something very custom. It's very helpful if you want to create some original shapes and different curved lines, but most of the time we don't use it. Next, we have the text option. It allows you to create text. You just select it, left click somewhere, and just start typing. Let's write, we are learning Figma. Just like that. And in order to adjust your text, you can head over to the text section in the design inspector, and I'm gonna increase the font size to 40, for instance. Let me just decrease the width of this text layer and increase the line height here. You can adjust the weight. There are many different properties you can adjust right there. Alright, next we have this resources option. If you just open it up, here we have 3 different panels: components, plugins, and widgets. Here you can find all your components, as I showed you in the assets panel before. You can just search for a specific component right here. You can also go to plugins. We will talk about plugins later. Now let's go to widgets. Since we haven't used any, you can't see anything here in the recent section, but you can just look for these community resources right there. And the next option is just this hand tool, which allows you to move around your canvas. You almost never select it here. As I showed you before, in order to move around your canvas, you may just need to press and hold the spacebar on your keyboard and left click and drag. And here we have a few other options that we will talk about later in this course. Alright, now let's talk about a little bit more about layers right here. Well, let's take a look at this design. Here we have a frame. If you take a look at your layers list, you will see that we have different frames. We have this Crypt X, homepage, and details, and you will see them right here. This icon indicates that this is a frame. And if I just extend it using this arrow right here, you will see all the layers inside this particular frame. Let's suppose I want to go to this homepage. I'm gonna extend it, and here we have all the layers used in this particular frame. If I just zoom in, I can just select this text layer, for instance, and you see that each of these layers has a unique icon. For example, text layers have this T icon. If you have a group, you will see this particular icon. If you have an image, you will see this icon. This one is for the auto layout frame that we will talk about later. And this one is an instance of a component. We will talk about components as well. If you want to rename a layer, you can just double click on its name and start changing it. I'm gonna change it to icon, let's say. And one thing you need to keep in mind is that the order of your layers matters when it comes to design. What do I mean by that? So let's suppose we select this card, and right behind it we have these decorative lines. As you can see, if I just select them, you will see that we have this group. Let's rename it to decorative lines so that you could easily find it here. The reason we can see this card clearly is because this group, this card, let's rename it to card, is above this decorative lines group in the layers list. If I just select this decorative lines group and I just drag and drop it above this card group, look what happens. Now these decorative lines are on top of our card group. That's why we can see them completely. And if I just want to see my card easily, I can just drag it and move it right here. Keep in mind that sometimes you might accidentally put a group inside another group, like this. If you just hover over another group and drop, you will see that your card group is now inside this decorative lines group. That's not what we want. Alright, great. Now that you know how the layers work, let's go ahead and talk about Boolean operations in Figma. So I'm going to go ahead and create a large frame here. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, left click and drag to create a large frame. And right here, I'm going to create different shapes. Let's create an ellipse. If I just left click and drag, by the way, I can just create this kind of shape, this ellipse, freely, okay? But if I want to get a perfect circle, I need to create it proportionately. And to do so, you need to hold down the shift key while you are drawing your shape, just like that. And as you can see now, the width and height are set to 202. Let me go ahead and change its color. To change its color, you need to head over to the field section in the inspector, and in this panel we can just choose a different color. Here I have a few different document colors. I'm gonna go ahead and select, for example, this one. It looks nice. Now I'm gonna duplicate it. To duplicate a layer, you can just simply select it and hit Ctrl D or Command D on your keyboard. And as you can see, now we have ellipse 2 in the layers list. I'm gonna move it to the right side, somewhere around here, okay? And I'm gonna select these two, duplicate them a few times, like this. One more time, and let's place them right here. So what are Boolean operations? Well, we have a few Boolean operations. They, for example, allow you to combine different shapes or subtract something from something else. Let me show you how they work. If I want these two shapes to be combined, I can just select them both. It's very important. In order for the Boolean operations to work properly, you need to select at least two shapes, okay? So I'm gonna select these two. Alternatively, you can just select one, hold down the shift key and select another one. And then in the toolbar, you will see this option. If I just click on this little arrow to extend this drop menu, here we have 4 different Boolean operations. We have union, subtract, intersect, and exclude. The first one allows you to combine these elements. If I just click on union, there it is. As you can see, they are combined, but you can still extend this layer and adjust them. That's awesome, isn't it? Now let's select these two and just click on subtract selection. This one allows you to subtract an element from another element. So let's suppose you want to create a moon icon, okay? To do that, you can just place 2 different circles like what I had here, and then use the subtract Boolean operation, select this shape and move it to the left side, and here is your moon icon, just like that. You can go ahead and adjust its color to whatever you want. Now let's select these two, and here we have the intersect selection. Basically what it does is this: it removes everything except the intersecting area. Okay, so for instance, if you want to create an eye icon, what you can do is this. You can just create two different circles like that, select them, and just click on intersect selection. Here is your eye. You can just now rotate it. To do that, you need to hover over this particular area and you will see the cursor changes. Hold down the shift key, left click, and just drag. Just like that, you can rotate it. Alternatively, you can head over to the inspector, and from here you can see this rotation property and change it easily. But it's not ready yet. We need to just subtract a circle from it. Now I can create another circle right here in the middle. Select them now and just select subtract selection. And here is our eye icon. And last but not least, we have the exclude selection. It basically keeps everything except the intersecting section. Alright, if you want to add an image to your project, you can simply just drag and drop an image into your project just like that. And then you can just adjust its size. Let me put it right here. You can see that it has all these properties like width, height, X, Y. These allow you to adjust the position. You can just move it around like this. That's how you can add an image to Figma. There are different ways to add images to Figma. This is one of them, probably the easiest one. But let's say you have a shape like a circle. Okay, and you want to add an image to it. You can go to the fill section where you change the color of your shape. Open it up. From here, from the top menu, you can go to image and you can choose an image on your system. You can adjust these settings like exposure, contrast, saturation, etc. here as well. Okay, just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and create a button here. Here we have a button as you can see, but we are going to create one together. We will need this rectangle. I'm going to left click and drag to create a rectangle. And I'm going to set its height to probably 52. And then I'm going to go ahead and change its width like that. And I'm going to change its color to blue probably, or maybe purple. I like it more. Okay, nice. So here we need a label. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to select the text tool, left click, and let's write sign in. It's too big for this button. I'm gonna head over to the text section and decrease its font size to 17 points, just like that, and I can place it right here. Let's suppose your text is placed there and you want to put it precisely in the center of this shape. In this case, you need to select your shape, hold down the shift key and click on this label. As you can see, both of them are selected now. And you can head over to the alignment section right here at the top of this inspector and click on this horizontal center alignment. You can just align it vertically as well. And now they are aligned perfectly. Alright, so we've created our button. Probably we can go ahead and make it rounded. Let me select this rectangle and increase the corner radius amount here to make it something like that. Now I'm going to select them both and group them. To group elements, you need to select them and hit Ctrl G or Command G on your keyboard. And there it is. Here we have a little issue. If I just double click on this text to select it, you can see the line height is set to 52.8. I'm going to set it to auto for now and let me realign it. Now it's better. So here we have our button. But our button is not responsive. What do I mean by that? Let me duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, move it down. Let's suppose you want to change this text to something else. For example, let's write get started. As you can see, the width of this button doesn't change when I change the text, which is not good because every time I want to create a new button, I need to go ahead and make sure that my width is properly set, and also I need to make sure that my text is aligned perfectly, and that's not efficient at all. Instead, we need to make sure that our elements are responsive. To do that, we need to use auto layout, and it's very simple to use. You just need to select your group here and hit Shift and A on your keyboard, and you see that nothing changes here, but in fact something changed. If you take a look at the layers list now, your group icon changed to this auto layout icon, okay? And it says frame because whenever you add auto layout to something, it will become a frame. So you may ask, what's the difference? Here is the difference. If I just duplicate this button now, hit Ctrl D or Command D and bring it down, and if I just type something like get started, look what happens. Now our button is responsive. The width of this button adjusts automatically based on the width of our label. And that's what we want. Here, if I select this button, you will see in the auto layout section, we have different options. You can modify the horizontal padding like this. You can modify the vertical padding like that. I can set it to 16. I can set this one to 32 to create this beautiful button. And here you can change the alignment. Right now, since we don't have many elements, you cannot see what this alignment option does. But when you have multiple elements, it's quite handy to set the alignment right here. And the other thing about auto layout is that we have basically two different directions when it comes to auto layout. We have horizontal and vertical. Let me show you what it means. Here we have two directions, vertical and horizontal. And as you can see, Figma automatically figured it out that we need a horizontal direction because we want our button to grow horizontally when I try to adjust this label. But let's suppose we want something to grow vertically. In that case, we would need a vertical direction. So let me show you another example. Let's suppose I create a rectangle here. I'm gonna just increase the corner radius amount like that. Let me change the color. And now I'm gonna add a shape, let's say a circle here. Let me just duplicate it a few times. And I'm gonna change the color of these circles to white that we could see them better. And now I'm gonna select them all and hit Shift and A. And as you can see, Figma automatically changed the direction to vertical because we want them to stack vertically on top of each other. And I can simply adjust the padding right there. And let's suppose I want to remove one of these circles. I can just double click on one of them and hit delete on my keyboard, just like that. What if I want to add something else? I can just create, let's say, a square and drag it and drop it, and you will see this little blue indicator allowing me to add something else into this auto layout frame. If I drop it, there it is. The height automatically adjusted accordingly. So let's suppose you want to add an icon to this sign in button. I can do that easily. So let's suppose you want to use this icon, for example, this one. I'm gonna select it. If you just double click on it, you will enter this frame in the layers list and you will go down and down until you reach this frame. I can just drag it, drop it, and place it right there. And here it is. You see how easy it is to work with auto layout? There are many things we can do with auto layout, and if you want me to create a more advanced tutorial specifically for auto layout, please let me know in the comment section down below. Alright, we talked about auto layout. Now let's talk about components. Let's suppose you create this button. I'm gonna remove this other button and this frame as well. So here is our sign in button. So here is our button. And let's suppose we want to design 20, 40, 50, 100 other pages. How can we use this particular button on other pages? Well, one way is to just recreate it, which is not good at all. The other way is to just go ahead and copy it, hit Ctrl C or Command C, and let's suppose we have another frame here. Okay, I'm gonna remove these. You can just paste it right here, but that's not a good way. And the reason is, if I do that, let's suppose later, once everything is ready, the company or your client decides to change something, let's say the corner radius amount, then you need to go ahead and manually adjust all of those pages, all of those buttons one by one, which is a tedious task. So to avoid that, we need to create a component. Components are basically reusable elements. We can turn this button or any other element into a component, and later we can reuse these components. Let's suppose we want to reuse this button. I select it, And to turn it into a component, I can head over to the toolbar and I can click on this Create Component button. As soon as I do that, you will see its boundaries color change to purple, and also if you take a look at the layers list, you will see it turn purple as well, and also its icon changed to this diamond icon. This icon indicates that this is a component. But how can we use our components? First, let me rename it to primary button. This is going to be the name of this component. One way is to just duplicate it. If I just duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D and move it up, you can see that I have an instance of a component. If you take a look at the layers list, you will see the icons are different. That's because this is our master component and this one is an instance of this master component. It's basically a copy of it. But you shouldn't confuse these two. I can simply remove this instance without removing the component, this master component. But if I go ahead and remove this component, the master component, from my design file, it will be gone forever and I won't be able to reuse it again and again anymore. So what's the difference between the instance and the master component? Let's suppose we create different pages, okay? I'm gonna select this artboard or frame and I'm gonna duplicate it a few times. Hit Ctrl D or Command D, and I'm going to reuse this button. As I showed you before, you can also go to the assets here. From local components, you can just drag and drop your primary button right there, and I'm going to repeat the same thing here a few times, just like that. Let me go ahead and put it right there, put this one here as well. Well, now we use this component on 4 different pages. Let's suppose you want to adjust its color. What should you do? Well, if I just want to change one of these instances, I can select this instance and I can simply adjust it without affecting other instances. Let me show you how. Just like that. You see, nothing else changed. I can also adjust the corner radius amount, like that. I'm gonna undo this. I'm gonna hit Ctrl Z or Command Z a few times. But if I go ahead and adjust the master component, look what happens. You see, when you change the master component, you are affecting all of its instances as well. But when you modify a particular instance, the changes will be applied to that particular instance. Just keep that in mind. It's very, very important. So now let's suppose you want to change the font of this button. You can simply adjust it here. I'm gonna write Enter, and there it is. All these buttons changed accordingly. Alright, now that you've learned about components, we're going to talk about something even more interesting, which is called variants. But before we do that, if you enjoyed this video so far, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button so that more and more people like you could find this video and benefit from it. Alright, what are variants and how we can use them? So let me show you an example. Here we have our master component, right? Here is our button. I'm going to bring it out for now. Let's suppose you want to create different versions of this button, because usually we create different states of our button. For example, we could have default, we could have tapped, hover, disabled, and also we could have a version with icon, a version without icon. And as you add more and more variations to your design system, it would be very hard to keep everything organized. But using variants, it's very easy to do that. Let me show you how it works. Here is our primary button. If I head over to the inspector, here we have a section called Properties. And you can see that there is this plus icon right here. If I just click on it, this window pops up. There are a few different options, and I'm going to click on Variant. As you can see, it says Create New Property. I'm going to click on Variant, and as soon as I do that, this little dashed frame is created, and it allows me to create different versions of this button, or let's say different variations. So first, let's select this component. Okay, we named it primary button, and by default it has these values. Okay, property 1, and the value is set to default. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this property 1. I'm gonna call it button, and then for the value I'm gonna write primary. So here is our button, and if you take a look at the layers list, you will see that we have our primary button master component, and inside, if you just extend it, you will see that we have this variant, and this variant is called primary. So button, and the type is primary. And I'm going to create a new variation now, and to do that, I'm going to click on this little plus icon right here, and as soon as I do that, a new button is created. You can easily select your master component and adjust the dimensions of this, let's say, dashed frame, so that you could organize all your variations here. I'm gonna place this new version probably here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and change this value here to outline. Okay, because I'm going to create an outlined version of this button. And then let's go to the fill section. We don't need the color anymore, so I'm going to click on this minus button, and instead I'm going to add a stroke to it. Let me change the color to the same color. The thickness is going to be, let's say, 2, and also I'm going to adjust the color of my text, so I'm going to select it. To select this text, you can hold down the control key or command key and just click on it. Let me change the fill to the same color, and for the icon as well, I'm going to select the icon and the color is going to be the same. So here we have the outlined version of this button, right? But how can we use it? Well, as you remember, we used different instances of our master component, right? If I just click on this one, and let's say you want to change it to the outlined variant. The way you can do that is you can head over to this section in the inspector. You will see you have your primary button component. Here you have the button property, and here you have this drop menu. As you can see, we have primary and outline as we just created in our canvas. And you can see them in the layers list as well. If I just change it to outline, there it is. We can easily change our button type. It's so handy, because imagine you have many different buttons and it would be very hard to keep everything organized. And in case you want to make changes, you can simply head over to your master component here. Let's suppose you want to adjust the thickness of this border. You can select it, and I'm going to go ahead and increase it to, let's say, 4 for now. It's too much, but I just want to show you how it works. As you can see, the change that we just made has been reflected here as well. Now let me show you another example. I'm going to undo these, okay? And I'm going to create 2 different buttons with and without icons. So I'm going to remove this one. Let me just adjust the dimensions of this frame. And here I have my primary button, but now I'm going to change these names. I'm going to change this one to icon, and I'm going to set the value here to true. It means that we have an icon actually in our button. Now I'm going to click on this add variant and place it right here. And I'm going to change this one to false, which means we don't have an icon. And in fact, let's select our icon here and just remove it. Okay, now let's see what happens when I select this button. As soon as I select it, you will see that on the right side, here we have this toggle button. It says icon, the name of our property, and here we have this toggle button, which allows us to switch between different variants. So if I just click on it, there it is. We have the version without icon. If I enable it, and here is our icon. The reason we get this toggle button is because I use that true false value, okay? If I used any other text, it wouldn't work. Just keep that in mind. And as you can see, the name here in the layers list has been changed as well. Icon equals false, icon equals true. All right, great. Now let's talk about plugins. A plugin is a third-party app, or let's say a piece of software, which allows you to add more functionalities to Figma and do something additional to what Figma has to offer. And there are many useful plugins in Figma that you can use, and I'm going to show you a few of them so that you just get an idea of how you can use plugins, how you can run them, etc. Well, basically, you can look for plugins in the Figma community. So if you just go to the Figma community here, and if I scroll down, you will see here we have all resources. If I just click on it, I can go to plugins, and here you can find many different plugins that you can use in your projects. And to try them out, you can just click on this try it out button. But instead of doing that right here, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can use any plugin inside your project. I'm going to get back to our project, and let's suppose we want to use a plugin. You can go to this resources section, go to plugins, and just look for a plugin that suits your needs. Here, I'm going to look for Content Reel. In fact, we have it right there under recent because I recently used that. It's a fantastic plugin. It allows you to add real data to your project. It has icons, it has profile images, etc. Let me show you how it works. If I just click on it, I can just click on run and it will run immediately. Alright, next, and start. So this plugin has different tabs: home, text, image, icon, and add. Let's go to text, and here you will see different libraries. Okay, for example, we have number, we have email, we have full name, lorem ipsum, US full address, etc. Then we have image, we have different avatars. You can see there are different libraries by different creators. This one is created by Microsoft, this one as well. Then we have icons. Let me show you how you can actually use this plugin. Let's suppose you have a shape, okay? I'm gonna add an ellipse here, and you want to add a profile image here, and you don't have an image for it. So what you can do is this: you select it, you run the plugin, you go to image, and from here you just click on this avatars, and there it is. If I just keep clicking on it, let's see what happens. You see, it just changes the image immediately. You can try different libraries, even you have logos. There are many different libraries created by different creators that you can try. I really like this toy face by Amrit, like that. If you need icon, you can just go to icons. From here, I'm gonna choose this Fluent Icons field created by Microsoft, and then you can just simply look for a specific icon, drag it and drop it into your project, and there it is. I'm gonna bring it down here. As you can see, it's so easy to use this plugin. What about text? So let me go ahead and create a few text layers here. I'm gonna just create one, let's call it address, and I'm gonna duplicate it a few times. Okay, maybe 6 times. Let's suppose you need 6 different addresses. Okay, I'm gonna select these text layers, and then here I'm gonna go to US full address. If I just click on it, there we go. We have different random addresses we can use in our design. You have email addresses as well, full name, number, currency, company names, anything you want. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's how you can use a plugin. There are many different plugins you can check out. For example, if you want to check the contrast ratio of your colors, you can use a plugin called Contrast. Let me go ahead and run it. I'm just gonna click on run. If I just select my text here on button, as you can see, it says for normal text less than 24 pixels or points, it failed. So I can make my button darker. If I just select my instance and I make it darker and now select my text, you will see that it passed the contrast ratio checker test. I highly recommend you to go ahead and check out different plugins in Figma, as you may need them in your projects. Alright, now let's talk about exporting your files. Let's suppose your design is ready and you want to hand it off to your developer. The way you can do that is like this. You select whatever you want to export. Let's suppose you want to export this whole homepage frame. You head over to the design inspector, scroll down. You will see this export option right at the bottom. If you just click on this plus button, you will see it says export at 1x. You can specify a suffix here, it's optional. And here you can specify the format. You can choose between PNG, JPEG, SVG, and PDF. And then you can just hit export homepage and it will be downloaded immediately, okay? But you may ask, what is this 1x, 2x, etc.? Well, this basically determines the dimensions of your exported file. Depending on the needs of your developers and depending on the needs of your client, you may need to export your files at 2x, 3x, or sometimes just 1x. It really depends. So let's suppose you design an iOS app and the developer or client would require you to deliver all the assets at 2x. Well, when you export the assets at 2x, whatever dimension you have here, let's suppose your width is set to 375, it will be doubled. Okay, your height as well. So the quality of your exported file will be higher. Therefore, when they use the assets on the app, or it could be a web app or a website, it would be crisp and very high quality. So keep that in mind. That's how you can export files on Figma. The next thing I'm going to talk about is grids. Well, grids are basically guidelines that help us to align everything and keep everything organized on our page. And the way you can activate grids is by heading over to layout grid section, and here you can just click on this plus button to add a grid to your page, as you can see. And if you just click on this icon, this window pops up and you can change the type of grid you're looking for. We have grid, we have columns, and we have rows. Most of the time we use grid and columns, okay? Some designers prefer columns, some designers prefer grid. You can also combine them if you want, but most of the time we use columns and grids. And here you can specify the number of columns. Let's suppose you want to have 4, and you can change the color here, the opacity, the type. You can set everything to center, and then you can change the margin. Let's set it to 20. You see, when I set the margin to 20, I will have this gap from the edge of my artboard or frame. If I set it to 40, you will see that it will be increased. What is this gutter? Well, the gutter is basically the amount of space between these columns. So if I just set it to 10, you will see that this gap will be smaller. If I increase it to 40, you will see that this gap will be bigger. Okay, I'm gonna set it to 20 and I can just hide it. Alright, so we talked about exporting your project, but sometimes you don't need to export your project. Sometimes you just want your client or the developer to preview the project. In that case, you can head over to this share button right here at the top, this blue button, and if you click on it, this window pops up. You can publish your project to the community if you want, or you can invite other people or other designers to your project. You can enter their email address here, then hit this send invite button. An invitation link will be sent to them and they can accept it and preview the project. They can also work on a project. As you can see here, we have this can view option. This means that they can only preview the project, but if you change it to can edit, they can actually modify the project. So you can create a team of designers and just collaborate with each other on a single project. That's awesome, isn't it? You can also get your project link using this copy link button right here. If you just copy it, share it with someone else, They don't need any invitation. They can just paste it on their browser and enter your project. The other thing I'm going to talk about is this comment section. Let me show you how it works. Let's suppose you are working on a large-scale project and you have a designer team and you want to get feedback from other designers or maybe other members of a company or stakeholders. In that case, they can simply add a comment. Let's suppose they want you to go ahead and change the corner radius of these buttons. So they are going to create a comment here and they say, "Hey Arash, could you please make this button completely rounded?" They send it, then you can open it up, you can reply here, and let's suppose you made the changes, you made it completely rounded. Let's go ahead and do that, and then you just reply, done. You can put an emoji here as well and send it. And once it's done, you can close this comment as well if you just click on this resolve button. So it's very, very helpful when you are working with other people and when you want to seek feedback. Okay, now let's talk about prototyping. Well, what's a prototype? A prototype is basically a simple version, or let's say the initial version of your final product. It's basically a concept. You can show how these screens are connected together, how a user should be taken from one page to another page. You can actually illustrate the flow of your app or website, because nowadays it's almost essential for all projects to have at least a kind of basic prototype, okay? So let's create a prototype together quickly. It's so simple. I'm going to select this first artboard. Let me disable this layout grid. What should we do? Well, basically, when the user clicks on this button, we want him or her to be taken to the next page, which is homepage. The way we do that is like this. We select this button, which is a trigger because the button should be actionable. And then we head over to the prototype tab here. As you can see, this little circle appears right here around the boundary of this button. If I just left click and drag, you will see this arrow line. I can just hover over this second screen, and now we created a connection between these two screens. And as soon as we create this connection, this interaction details window pops up. Here you can adjust the settings of your interaction. So first you need to define the type of your trigger, whether it's on drag, whether the user should drag something or the user should hover over something. We have many different kinds of triggers, but here the designer already created this click interaction. I'm gonna remove it and let's go ahead and set it on click. Okay, so we define the trigger, and here as you can see it says navigate to homepage. So the destination, the final destination of this transition is this homepage. And then we need to define the type of animation. Here we have instant, dissolve, smart animate, move in, move out, etc. I'm gonna set it to maybe instant for now, and let's see how it works. So to preview your prototype, you can either click on this play button here, it says flow 1, or you can just click on this play button right there. I'm gonna click on this button. There it is. Now I'm gonna click on this get started button and let's see what happens. There we go. As you can see, we've been taken to the home page as soon as we clicked on it, and that's exactly what we needed, right? So now let's go to home page, and we want to create another interaction. So I want to click on this tab here, tab 2, select it in the layers list, go to the prototype, and I'm going to create an interaction like that. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to go to my preview, just refresh the page. Once again, get it started. And if I click on this button, look what happens. There it is. We've been taken to this detail page or trading page. So as you can see, it's very easy and simple to create a prototype inside Figma. This is the most basic type of prototyping, of course. You can create advanced prototypes and animations inside Figma, but we are not going to dive into the details of more advanced animations as it requires so much time. Alright, now that you know how to prototype in Figma, Let's talk about something else. Let's suppose we want to animate this button, okay? So I'm going to remove this interaction for now, and I'm going to select this button. Let's suppose we want to create a hover state for this button. And yes, you're right, we don't have a hover state on mobile applications, but for the sake of this tutorial, I just want to show you how to do it. You can use it for websites, of course. You may say, well, we can duplicate this page like this. Then we can select this button, okay? And we can go to fill. We can probably add another fill here, make it lighter, just like this. Then we can create a connection. We select this get started button, go to prototype, create a connection, and then we will change the trigger to while hovering and animation to instant or smart animate. And let's give it a try. Let's preview it. So here is our first screen. If I just hover over this button, look what happens. You see, it works. But this is not a good way to do that, because in this case, you need to go ahead and duplicate your screen again and again and again every single time. And imagine you have like 50 or 100 or 200 different screens. You can't just duplicate them every time you want to create a new prototype or a new interaction. That's going to be very hard. Instead, we are going to use a smart way, and it's called interactive components. Right. Again, we are going to talk about components. So let's get back to the component that we created here. Do you remember that? I'm going to select this sign in, remove it for now, and I'm going to select this one. Let me go ahead and change the name here to button. And here I'm going to call it primary. Then I'm going to add another variant, and this one is going to be hover. Let's go ahead and add a new fill to it. Make it lighter, just like that. So we have primary, we have hover. Now let's make these components interactive. To do that, you just need to select your main button, this one. Go to prototype, and then try to connect this one to the second variant. And just like the example that I just showed you, you can select a trigger and just set the animation. That's all. So I'm going to set it to while hovering and then smart animate. That's all. And now whenever you use an instance of this master component, it's already interactive. So you don't need to go ahead and make it interactive on all pages. So here we have one of those instances, right? If I just select this artboard and I hit this play button, here is our button. I'm gonna hover over it and look what happens. There it is. As you can see, it's interactive. So the way you need to make your buttons and your UI elements interactive is by utilizing the interactive component feature of Figma. That's so powerful. You can create awesome things using interactive components. Alright, now let's talk about constraints. Well, if I select any elements on my page, you will see that this section appears in the inspector, which is called constraints. Well, any element by default has a few constraints, okay? As you can see, these blue dashed lines, these are called constraints. So they allow Figma to understand how they should be positioned based on the size of your frame. If I just create another frame, let me go ahead and create one quickly, just like that. And I'm gonna select this button and place it right here, right in the middle. Okay? If I head over to the constraints section, you will see that by default, the constraints are set to left and top. What does it mean? If I select this frame and I try to adjust its width, look what happens. It stays where it is. It doesn't move. That's because of these constraints right here. But let's suppose you want this button to stay right at the center whenever you adjust the dimensions of this frame. The way you do that is like this. You select your button, you go to constraints, and here, instead of left and top, you set the constraints to center and center. Now look what happens. When you adjust the width and height, it always stays in the center. So when it comes to responsiveness, constraints are so helpful. Let me show you another example. Here we have this home page, and we have this tab bar right at the bottom. Let's suppose you design this page and later you decide to make it scrollable, so you need to increase the height. If I just select this home page and increase the height, look what happens. You see these elements, they all move, but that's not good, okay? That's because of not using constraints properly. So how can we fix it? Well, we can select, for example, this tab bar right at the bottom and then change the constraints. I'm gonna set the constraints to bottom, okay, and center. Look what happens now. You see? Now when I increase the height of this home page, this tab bar stays at the bottom of this page. Now let's take a look at another example. Let's suppose I want to make sure that this button is responsive, okay? So I'm going to select this button, and as you can see, the constraints are set to left and top. If I adjust the dimensions of this artboard, you will see that this button stays where it is. So to fix this issue, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to change the constraints to left and right. So here we have the left and right option. And also, I'm going to make sure that it always stays at the bottom. So now let's give it a try. As you can see, it's responsive, but our text is not in the middle. That's because of our auto layout alignment. If I just select this frame and I change the alignment to center, now it should work just fine, okay? We can do the same thing for this title. I'm gonna select this title and I'm gonna set the constraints to center and top because I always want it to stay right at the center. Let's do the same thing for this one and now for this one as well. But we need to just change the alignment because it doesn't make sense right now. Just like this. Let's align everything to the center and also this picture to the center. I'm gonna set it to center and top, but this one is set to left and right and top, okay? Let's give it a try. Now everything is responsive, good. But here we have a problem. If I decide to increase the height of this page, look what happens. Our button doesn't move. That's because we set the constraints to top here. If I set it to bottom, now it should stay at the bottom, just like that. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this.